Welcome to this lesson on bid and no bid decisions in government contracting. In this session, we are going to work through one of the most important decisions a contractor can make before submitting a bid, whether the opportunity actually makes sense for the business. Too often, businesses focus only on whether they can win the contract. That is not enough. A contract can look attractive on paper and still be a bad fit if the price is too low, the required quantity is too high, or the company does not have the capacity to perform the work safely. This lesson will connect three practical concepts: capacity, price, and minimum quantity. You will learn how to calculate your true cost, compare your price to the market, estimate the quantity needed to meet your profit goal, and confirm whether your business can actually deliver at that level. The goal is not to scare you away from bidding. The goal is to help you make a disciplined decision before you commit. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to look at an opportunity and say, with evidence, this is a bid, this needs modification, or this is a no bid. Before you submit a bid, you need to answer three basic questions. First, can we deliver it? That is the capacity question. It asks whether your business has the people, equipment, inventory, systems, time, and cash flow to perform the work. Second, can we make money? That is the pricing question. It asks whether your price covers your true costs, includes operating expenses and salary, and leaves room for profit. Third, what order size works? That is the quantity question. It asks whether the buyer's required volume is large enough to meet your profit goal, but not so large that it breaks your capacity. These are connected decisions. You cannot look at capacity, price, or quantity in isolation. A bid may look attractive until you calculate the real cost. A price may look competitive until you realize the volume required is too high. A large order may look like a win until you realize your business cannot safely deliver it. So, this session brings two lessons together: capacity and pricing. The goal is to help you make a better bid or no bid decision before you commit to work that may not actually fit your business. This module is set up in two parts because a bid can fail in more than one way. Some businesses lose money because they price too low. Others win work they cannot staff, produce, deliver, or manage. Some have a decent price, but the buyer's quantity does not match what the business needs to make the order worthwhile. So we are not treating capacity and pricing as separate topics. We are using them together as a readiness check. Part 1 helps you test whether the business can perform the work. Part 2 helps you test whether the work is financially worth accepting. By the end, the question is not just, can we bid? The better question is, can we perform this contract? At this price, at this quantity, without damaging the business? Small contractors often run into trouble when they treat a bid like a chance to win instead of a decision to perform. The bad pattern is simple. See the solicitation, want the contract, guess the numbers, copy the market, bid low, and hope it works. The better pattern is more disciplined. Define what you're counting, identify the constraint, calculate realistic capacity, price from actual cost, check the market, and confirm the minimum quantity. That process gives you control. You are no longer guessing. You are deciding whether to bid as is, adjust the opportunity, partner, or walk away. That is the difference between chasing work and being ready for it. The bid readiness triangle has three sides: cost, price, and capacity. Cost answers the question, will we make money? This means you understand the true cost of doing the work, not just the obvious expenses. Price answers the question, will the buyer accept it? Your price has to make sense in the market, or you need a strong reason why the buyer should pay more. Capacity answers the question, can we deliver? You need to know whether your business can perform the work without overloading your people, systems, equipment, cash flow, or current customer commitments. A bid becomes risky when one side of the triangle is ignored. You may have a good price but weak capacity. You may have capacity but no profit. You may know your cost but price yourself outside the market. Before you bid, all three sides need to survive the stress test. Part 1 begins with capacity. Capacity is the amount of work your business can complete within the required time frame while still maintaining quality documentation, staffing, delivery, and current customer commitments. The important point is that we are not looking for your best case number. Best case capacity assumes everything goes perfectly. That is not how contracts usually work. Theoretical capacity is the perfect world number. It assumes no delays, no absences, no equipment problems, no supplier issues, and no competing demands. Effective capacity adjusts that number for real operating limits. Available capacity goes one step further by subtracting the work that is already committed to current customers or existing contracts. Safe bid capacity is the number you should rely on before you promise performance to a buyer. The simple rule is this: never bid from perfect world capacity. Bid from the amount of work your business can actually complete without breaking quality, timelines, staffing, or the rest of your operation. The first step is to get very specific about what you are actually measuring. Capacity only works when the unit is clear. For some businesses, that may be one case, one pallet, or one assembled item. For others, it may be 1 hour, one trip, one visit, or one completed service call. Do not estimate capacity around vague words like job or project. Those words are too loose. They hide the real amount of labor, time, materials, and coordination required. Before you price the work or decide whether to bid, identify the buyer's unit of measure and build your calculation around that. If you cannot clearly define one completed unit, your pricing and capacity math are already weak. The key to estimating capacity and developing accurate pricing is finding the bottleneck in your production process. This is the step most small businesses overlook. Capacity is not controlled by the fastest step in your process. It is controlled by the slowest required step. Ask yourself, which step slows everything down? Which step has the most glitches? Which step takes the longest to complete? Which step depends on the least experienced team members? Your true capacity for delivering goods or services depends on your ability to review your process objectively. Once you understand where the bottleneck is, you can bid more confidently because you are forecasting what you can actually deliver. That affects your timeline, your staffing needs, your minimum order size, and the price you should charge your potential client. For product companies, capacity is usually controlled by the bottleneck. That means you should not build the estimate around your fastest step. Build it around the slowest required step, because that is what limits output. Once you know the bottleneck output, subtract the reality of production. Account for downtime, setup, cleaning, changeovers, supply delays, quality loss, rework, waste, and any capacity already promised to other customers. Then reserve a risk buffer for normal disruption. The number left is your safe product capacity. That is the number to use before you bid. Not the number you could produce on a perfect day, the number you can produce, inspect, package, and deliver while still protecting quality and current commitments. For service companies, the biggest mistake is treating every labor hour as a billable service hour. Start with gross labor, the number of people available multiplied by the number of hours they can work. That gives you a starting point, not the final answer. Then subtract the work that consumes time but does not directly produce the service. Travel, reporting, supervision, scheduling, administration, existing customer commitments, and a risk buffer all reduce the hours you can safely promise. The hours left after those deductions are your safe service capacity. That is the number you should use before you bid. Not the perfect schedule. Not the fully staffed fantasy version. The real number left after the business accounts for the work required to actually manage and deliver the contract. Capacity problems usually show up inside the solicitation before you ever bid. Look for requirements that quietly consume time, labor, space, supervision, documentation, or cash flow. A tight delivery schedule, special labeling, inspection requirements, cold storage, multiple sites, short response times, after-hours coverage, background checks, reporting, and quality control all reduce capacity. None of these requirements are automatically bad. The problem is pretending they are free. Every extra requirement has to be counted. It may change your staffing plan, your delivery schedule, your inventory needs, your reporting time, or your price. When you review a solicitation, do not just ask, Can we provide this product or service? Ask, what will this requirement consume? And have we included that in our capacity and price? In part two, we will connect the work and production process to money. These are the questions to consider when you start the pricing analysis for a bid. What is the lowest price we can afford to offer without losing money? What is the buyer likely willing to pay for similar work? How many units must be ordered for the profit target to make sense? You should consider all of these questions when preparing the price for your contract bid. The next slides will discuss these techniques in more detail. Cost plus pricing gives you the pricing floor. It tells you the minimum price you need to charge to cover your real costs before adding profit. To calculate cost plus pricing, you first need to identify your true costs. The box on the left lists production expenses that product-based companies should evaluate and include in their cost plus analysis. The box on the right provides a similar list for service-based companies. Your analysis should include all costs, including your own market-based salary and related expenses, even if you do not currently pay yourself at that level. Remember, salaries are not paid from profits. They are paid from operating expenses, and those expenses should be built into your price. The reason is simple. If you quote prices without including salary, you are leaving out a major business expense. That makes your price look lower than it really is. If you do not account for salary now, your product or service costs may rise significantly later when you decide to pay yourself properly. That pricing adjustment can create serious problems. You may have to raise your prices enough to become less competitive. Or worse, you may win a contract that does not actually cover the full cost of performance. Market pricing gives you a reality check on your cost plus price. Your cost plus price may tell you what you need to charge, but the market tells you whether that price is likely to be competitive. A buyer may decide that your cost plus price is too high compared to what other vendors are charging for similar products or services. A basic market pricing analysis should include 3 steps. First, check past awards, similar products or services, catalogs, and agency purchase histories to identify recent market prices. Next, compare those prices to your cost plus price range. Ask yourself, how close are these numbers? Then make a decision. You may decide to bid anyway, even if there is a large gap between your price and the market price. That may make sense if you have a strong differentiator, higher quality, faster delivery, better reporting, or another value the buyer is willing to pay for. You may also decide to walk away if the numbers do not support the bid. If the market price is too low for you to cover your real costs and make a reasonable profit, the opportunity may not be a good fit. Winning a contract that loses money is not a win. Once you know your price and your capacity, you can bring those two concepts together to determine the minimum order size you need to make the contract worth pursuing. Start with this question. How much profit do you want to make from each sale, order, or contract? That is a business decision. It should be based on your real costs, your selling price, your capacity, and what the market will reasonably support. For example, let's say you want to make $1,000 in profit on each order. You already know your cost. You also have a good idea of your market price. The difference between your selling price and your cost is your profit per unit. In this example, selling price, $52 per unit. Cost, $42 per unit. Profit per unit, $10. So the question becomes, how many units do you need to sell to make $1,000 in profit? The math is simple. $1,000 target profit divided by $10 profit per unit equals 100 units. That means you need to sell 100 units to reach your $1,000 profit goal. If you earn more profit per unit, you can sell fewer units and still reach your profit goal. If you earn less profit per unit, you will need to sell more units to reach the same goal. This is why price matters. A small change in price can create a big change in the number of units you need to sell. Profit is important because it gives the business resources to grow and stabilize. Profit can help you hire people, buy equipment, invest in technology, build reserves, and prepare for larger contracts. But remember, profit is not where your salary or operating expenses come from. Salaries and operating expenses should already be included in your cost structure and built into your price. Profit is what remains after those costs are covered. It is the money that supports the growth, strength, and long-term stability of the company. Here's an example of the profit chart referenced in the last slide. The chart shows a simple but important relationship. Lower price requires higher volume. Higher volume requires capacity. A low price may look competitive at first, but if that price only works when you sell a very high quantity, you need to ask whether your business can actually produce, deliver, staff, store, track, or manage that volume. This is where pricing and capacity have to be evaluated together. A low price can quietly create a serious performance problem. You may win the contract, but the order quantity may be too large for your current staffing, equipment, inventory, cash flow, or delivery systems. That is why the minimum order calculation matters. It helps you answer a practical question before you bid. Can we sell enough units at this price to make the profit we need, and do we have the capacity to perform at that volume? If the answer is no, the price is not truly competitive. It is risky. Here's the process that you need to follow before you submit a bid. 1. Calculate true cost. 2. Add required profit. 3. Check the market price range. 4. Calculate minimum quantity. 5. Confirm your capacity. 6. Make the bid or no bid decision based on facts, not intuition. Your price is not ready until the quantity and capacity also work. Here's the bid decision matrix you can use to support your final decision. The purpose of this matrix is to help you evaluate the opportunity based on facts, not instinct. Use the matrix to review the key questions. Have you calculated your true cost? Have you included the profit you need? Is your price within a reasonable market range? Does the minimum quantity support your profit goal? Do you have the capacity to produce, deliver, staff, document, and manage the work? Can you perform the contract without putting the rest of your business at risk? If the answers are mostly yes, the opportunity may be worth bidding. If the answers are mostly no, the better decision may be to walk away. The goal is not just to win the contract. The goal is to win work that your business can perform profitably, reliably, and without creating avoidable operational problems. This is where you test the lesson against a real opportunity. Choose one solicitation, one buyer request, or one contract you are considering. Do not use imaginary numbers. Use the best numbers you have right now. First, test capacity. Make sure you know the unit, the bottleneck, and the safe amount of work you can actually deliver. Also, name the weakest assumption in your estimate because that is where the risk usually sits. Then test the pricing. Calculate true cost, set the profit you need, compare your price to the market, and determine the minimum quantity required for the work to make sense. Once those pieces are clear, make a decision. You do not have to force a yes. You may bid as is, bring in a partner, ask for different terms, or walk away. The purpose of the exercise is not to talk yourself into the bid. It is to find out whether the opportunity holds up under real numbers. For product-based businesses, capacity starts with the unit. Before you bid, you need to be clear about what you are actually counting. Is the unit one case, one box, one meal, one printed piece, one assembled item, or one delivered order? If the unit is not clear, your capacity calculation will be wrong from the beginning. Next, identify the quantity the buyer requires. Do not just look at the total number. Pay attention to the delivery schedule. Producing 5,000 units over 6 months is very different from producing 5,000 units in 2 weeks. Then look at your production process and identify the step that controls output. This is your bottleneck. It may be equipment, packaging, labeling, inspection, staffing, storage, delivery, or supplier availability. Your capacity is usually controlled by the slowest or most limited part of the process. Once you know the bottleneck, estimate how many units that step can realistically complete each week. Then adjust that number for downtime, waste, rework, or other delays. No business performs at perfect capacity every week. You also need to subtract capacity that is already committed to current customers or other contracts. Do not pretend that every hour, every worker, and every piece of equipment is available for this new opportunity. After that, reserve a risk buffer. This gives you room for late supplies, equipment problems, staff absences, quality issues, or unexpected buyer requests. The number you have left is your safe weekly bid capacity. That final number should guide your decision. You can bid as is, partner with another company, ask to modify the quantity or delivery schedule, or make a no bid decision. The point of this worksheet is simple. Do not bid based on hope. Bid based on the amount your business can safely produce, deliver, and manage. For service-based businesses, capacity is usually measured in time. Before you bid, you need to define the service unit. Is one unit 1 hour, one site visit, one trip, one training session, one completed repair, one help desk ticket, or one staff shift? If you are not clear about the unit, you cannot accurately calculate capacity. Next, identify the volume or response time the buyer requires. A contract that requires 10 service calls per month is very different from one that requires same-day response, weekend coverage, or 24-hour availability. Then calculate your gross labor hours. This is the total number of hours your team could theoretically provide before anything is subtracted. But gross hours are not the same as available hours. You need to subtract the hours that are already committed to current customers, existing contracts, internal work, or other obligations. Then subtract the time required for travel, reporting, supervision, scheduling, administration, and quality control. These activities may not be the direct service, but they still consume capacity. Once those hours are subtracted, you can identify your available service capacity. From there, look for the main bottleneck. The bottleneck may be staffing, scheduling, travel distance, supervision, specialized credentials, response time, equipment, vehicles, or administrative support. The bottleneck is the part of the service process most likely to limit performance. You should also reserve a risk buffer. Service contracts are vulnerable to absences, emergencies, traffic delays, turnover, rework, client changes, and unexpected reporting requirements. If every available hour is already assigned, the contract is too tight. The final step is to make a bid decision. You may be able to bid as is. You may need a partner. You may need to modify the staffing plan, service schedule, response time, or price, or you may need to walk away. The purpose of this worksheet is to keep you honest. Service businesses do not run on wishful thinking. They run on people, time, systems, supervision, and follow-through. Your bid should reflect the capacity you can actually deliver. This worksheet brings the pricing and capacity discussion together. Start with your cost per unit. This should reflect your true cost, including materials, labor, overhead, packaging, delivery, administration, and any salary or operating expense that needs to be built into the price. Next, enter your selling price per unit. This may come from your cost plus analysis, your market pricing research, or a combination of both. Then calculate your profit per unit. The formula is simple. Selling price per unit minus cost per unit equals profit per unit. Once you know the profit per unit, decide how much profit you want to make from the order. That is your target profit per order. Then calculate the minimum quantity required to reach that target. Divide your target profit by your profit per unit. For example, if your target profit is $1,000 and your profit per unit is $10, you need to sell 100 units to reach that goal. After that, ask two practical questions. First, can the buyer order that quantity? If the buyer only needs 40 units, but you need to sell 100 units to make the order worthwhile, the numbers do not work unless you adjust the price. Second, can you safely deliver that quantity? If the buyer can order 100 units, but your business can only produce or deliver 60 units safely, the quantity does not work either. The final decision should come from the numbers. The price works, the quantity needs to change, or you walk away. The point of this worksheet is to stop treating price as a single number. A price only works when the cost, profit, quantity, and capacity all work together. This is the discipline behind a smart bid decision. Do not promise what you cannot perform. That means you should not bid on work unless you have the staffing, equipment, inventory, systems, cash flow, and time required to deliver it well. Do not price work that cannot produce a profit. A low price may help you look competitive, but if it does not cover your true costs and leave room for profit, It is not a smart price. Do not accept quantity that breaks capacity. A large order is not automatically a good order. If the quantity overwhelms your operation, disrupts current customers, or forces you to perform beyond your safe limits, the contract can damage the business instead of helping it grow. That is why bid readiness requires alignment. Your capacity has to work, your price has to work, your minimum quantity has to work. If one of those pieces does not work, the bid is not ready. The goal is not just to win contracts. The goal is to win contracts your business can perform profitably, reliably, and without putting the rest of the company at risk.